Aloha kako, mahalo nui for joining us for our final day of 2020 ʻAha Haumāna Native Hawaiian Student Leadership Conference hosted by Kipuka Native Hawaiian Student Center at UH Hilo. This year's conference will be completely virtual, which allows presenters from across the ʻāina to join us remotely. In this platform, all participants will be muted, but welcome you to send in any questions you may have throughout the presentation by using the Q&A features at the bottom of your screen. We'll have some time to address these questions following the presentation. No ka ʻāina e alo pū mai ana me ke hau o mauna kea kahi lehua e noho mai ana I ka ua ki puʻupuʻu o Waimea. He koa a he mamo a kona mau kupuna no lākou ka ʻimi pau ʻole no ka pono o ka nohona Hawaiʻi. He pulapula ʻoia o nei e hoʻomau I ke ala I waele mua ia e kona mau kupuna kai ki papa I ke alo na awao e au nei ka nui Hawaiʻi I ke kai loa o ka ʻike a Noiʻi Novelo. Dr. Kamana Beamer is a professor at the Center for Hawaiian Studies in the Hui Aina Momona program at the University of Hawaii at Manoa with a joint appointment in the Richardson School of Law at the Hawaii Nui Akea Schools for Hawaiian Knowledge. Previous to this role, Dr. Beamer was the president and chief executive officer of the Kohala Center. Beamer's research on governance, land tenure, and Hawaiian resource management, as well as his prior work as a director of ʻāina-based education at Kamehameha Schools, prepared him for his continuing service as a director of Stanford University's First Nation Future Institute. Dr. Beamer's contributions for Hawaiian scholarships, coupled along with a deep and commemorable humility, pales only in comparison to the visionary leadership role that he truly embraces. His work around the circular economies and alternate methods of sustainable world has inspired many of his Haumāna and others to maliu his wise words and to embody his philosophy of lohaʻaina. Also joining him today is Dr. Noenoe Wong-Wilson, who is a Kanaka Maoli educator, cultural practitioner, and a native rights activist born and raised in Kailua, Koʻolaupoko, Oahu. She is a graduate of the University of Hawaii Hilo and Manoa and has successful careers in the insurance field, hospitality industry, and in the government service. Noenoe and her family spent 18 months sailing through the Pacific and immersing themselves in cultural and communities of the small island nation. She returned to Hawaii to coordinate the World Indigenous Peoples Conference of Education in Hilo in 1999. This path led her back to the field of education, and her accomplishments as a community organizer, educator, and native rights activist. She retired as an assistant professor in Hawaii Studies and coordinator of the Halaulani Transfer Success Center of Hawaii Community College, and serves as an executive director of Lala Kea Foundation, a nonprofit organization whose purpose is to perpetuate Hawaiian arts and spirituality. Noenoe also served as on several other communities, organizations, and boards. She has organized numerous educational and cultural conferences and workshops in Hawaii. Most recently, Auntie Noenoe was at the forefront of the Kukeʻi Mauna movement as one of our hulu kupuna that led, guided, and advised our lahui during these significant times. Me ka oli a haʻahaʻa maoli no au e hoʻolauna nei I mau kua vivo ole o nei ʻāina Aloha, a Dr. Brenton Kamana Beamer, lawa o Dr. Noenoe Wong-Wilson.
Ui, aloha mai kako. Wow. Ke noho nei me ka haʻahaʻa ma muli o kia poʻeleo nani lua ole. Mahalo piha. Yeah. O ko pakahi a pau no ke komo ana mai I loko nei ma ke ano he virtual conference. Woohoo! Aloha. I wanted to just mahalo everyone that's in attendance. I want to send out heartfelt aloha to each of you, and in the hopes and spirits that your individual mauli ola is doing well, that of your ohana in the midst of these incredibly challenging times. And I think you being here today is really evidence, is a whole ʻailona of the kind of strength and resilience of our people and who we are today. So thank you folks for joining us. And mahalo, Auntie Noenoe, for being here and being a part of this, leading this effort around ʻāina Aloha Economic Futures.
Aloha, aloha mai kako, everybody. I'm very privileged to be here, part of Kipuka's Native Hawaiian Leadership Conference, and looking forward to this presentation with you, Kamana. And I just want to say aloha to everyone, Gail, and to Darlene, and all of you who have been part of Kipuka since its inception. I'm very proud and supportive of what this organization has done through the decades. So I'm really happy to be here. Mahalo.
So our tentative plan for today is I'm going to do a short kind of presentation to get you folks acquainted with some of the concepts around circular economy. And then Auntie Noenoe and I are going to share around our effort on ʻāina Aloha Economic Futures. And we're going to do so just through usage of kind of our website, so you folks can become acquainted to it. And, you know, we're hoping to continue to build capacity and engage the brilliance of our community in leading our future towards, the future that we all want to see for our ʻāina and community, a future that is more pono and just and equitable. So with that being said, now we got to test my technical capabilities and see if I can pull up this this PowerPoint. So let me make sure this can, I think I just hit the share. Share. Oh, let me try again. Sharing has failed to start. Why is that? One more chance. Let me try. Okay. Are we seeing a slide now? I believe so. Okay. So, all of us are familiar with, Aloha ʻāina and, the brilliance and resilience of our kupuna. This slide helps me to kind of picture it and to imagine, the decisions that we make as people, as leaders, as consumers, as Haumāna, in guiding the leadership of our ʻāina, right, and the things that we want to see. And so to me, our leadership is demonstrated in the health of our ʻāina, right, in the health of our community and who we are as a people. And so this phrase I've heard kawa'a, often mentioned, this wai in ʻōwai ʻoi, and what better symbolism, to think about the wealth and health of our community and well-being than when we look at kind of the state of our water systems, right? And we can see, with that ʻōwai ʻoi, the idea that, hey, what kind of water are you gonna bring? It's not just what's your name, but what is your water? Is it the beautiful way that flows, from Wai'anu stream? Is it the way that comes down through, Waipi'o, that's filtered and collected through our kalo, and then, feeding abundance, makai, in the muliwai, in the fish ponds and the local. And we can see that the management system of our kupuna, they got that right. They really got that right, and they achieved this relative level of harmony and balance with our natural systems, with Papahonua Mea, with Kanaika Waiola, where we thought about these systems as ancestral relationships, right, and deities. And then we can see that change and shift, yeah. And what kind of water does that bring when we re-engineer things for economic profit? Just one sort of agenda, right? And we can see the degradation that's kind of take place in this particular image. So we're challenged with this here in Hawaii, and globally there are these other efforts, that at least myself and some of my Haumāna have been involved in around circular economies. And globally, they're trying to solve these same problems. How do we fix these kinds of systems? And so what is a circular economy? Circular economy, some of the key aspects are regenerative and equitable economic systems, okay? The goals of a circular economy is to try to decouple economic growth from environmental degradation. What we want, to achieve is meaningful work while rejuvenating the environment. Some of the principles on circular economy look at products, and particularly you want to minimize waste. And so, when we pull natural resources out of the ʻāina, out of the environment, whether it's, here in Hawaii or in Africa, we want to think about the health of Mother Earth, right? Of the use of those resources. And we want to keep, those resources, in place for as long as possible. So a lot of it is, here's my, hard to see, image of my iPhone, right? You think about what it takes to produce something like this iPhone, right? Or your flat screen TV, okay? And they think about that as a, usually it functions as a linear economy. So we gather materials from wherever it be, all over the world, right? Gather these trace materials, you bring them to where the mode of production is, you produce this flat screen TV, right? The company sells it, we put it on our wall, 2 years later, ting bus, and where does it go? It goes into a landfill, right? It creates more waste. And the responsibility then of the company is just to derive profit, right? What is their motivation for building something that lasts as long as possible? In fact, there isn't. And in fact, there's more motivation that it will break every few years so that it has to be replaced and they can generate more profit. So this sort of economic philosophy, has basically brought our planet to the brink of collapse with climate change. I mean, we can apply this linear economy concept to pretty much everything. Look around you, wherever you're sitting in your house, right? It's been built in this linear economy fashion, right? Take, make, dispose, and waste, and it becomes someone else's problem. So all across the world, particularly in the EU, in pockets in China, they're rethinking how do we fix this problem on a local and global scale, and how do we, eliminate waste and make this process and system circular, like the ways in which our planet, right, life on our planet has survived for, billions of years, because everything in nature is a circle, right? Even us, our bodies, here I am talking today, whatever, Dr. Beamer, my name, 250 years from now, I'm soil, right? And hopefully I'm feeding some beautiful plants that are feeding my keiki, right? And that's how life works on our planet. And this movement towards circular economy is about remembering and recognizing and trying to bring our production systems back in alignment. So for us, when we think about how can we build, contribute to this movement around circular economy, and I believe some of my Haumāna, Mahi'ai Dochin, and others are in this session. You folks are already contributing. Our colleagues, we have a network and a collaboration with some professors in Germany at the University of Augsburg, and that's ongoing. But to me, when I think about, Aloha ʻāina and our philosophies, it's really about give, take, rejuvenate. How did our kupuna interact with natural systems and the natural world, right? Before we went and collected ʻiʻa, we fed the ko'a, right? So we gave first, and then you gather what you need, but you create this, regenerative, rejuvenative relationship between you and the natural systems around you. And so, we have a real opportunity then to reshape, our economy, and I think align and build international partnerships with others around the world that are focused on circular economy, because we have this deep ancestral philosophy that understands these relationships with the natural world and environment. And in fact, sometimes I think about our movement, over the last 30 plus years, this has kind of been the call is, we it's not that we wanted to stop the right projects. We wanted projects that actually feed our community, that actually create abundance, that protect our natural resources and environments while providing meaningful work and livable wages, real jobs for our community. And so this struggle has really been going on for many years. And I think that kind of gives birth to, what we found ourselves in when we created ʻAina Aloha Economic Futures. Really, it started just with some phone calls and conversations with just pockets and groups of us, and it kind of grew into this larger effort that we're a part of now. Originally there's 14 of us that through these phone calls and conversations kind of came up with a roadmap and a plan, in the midst of COVID, to try to rethink the so-called reopening. I get that word is kind of an interesting thing, the reopening of our economy. But, when have our natural systems had a chance to rest from, the chemicals in sunscreen for this long, right? And so it was some of these ideas and thoughts where we thought as a group, hey, maybe we have an opportunity to really, if we're going to create a new system or reform a structure, and now is a great time to do it. So maybe we can, I will stop my share, and then we can jump into the website.
So if you allow me to share my screen. There you go. You should see this.
Great. And so the Auntie Noenoe, would you like to help kind of give some context? Again, I kind of talked about those early phone conversations. Maybe can you help to frame it for our listeners in terms of, where we started with creating ʻAina Aloha?
Sure. So as Kamana said, back in April, a group of us got together on Zoom, started talking to each other about what was happening in our community. And of course, we were being asked to stay at home, to quarantine. The COVID-19 pandemic was really beginning to show itself here in Hawaii. And we saw our businesses starting to have to shut down, being told that we couldn't be out in public. So we looked at what was going on. We talked about what we saw our government was beginning to share with us in how alarmed government agencies were over what was happening in our community. And we saw a couple of things, two things, I think, specifically. One is, Kamana mentioned, we saw the effect on our natural environment when you removed the pressures that we have placed on our own environment, not only mechanically, but the pressure of people. All of our population, our community, as well as the 10 million plus visitors who have been visiting in our community. And I think one of the first remarkable things that everyone noticed was when there was an absence of a large human presence, that our own ʻāina could quickly begin to recover. And we saw that in places like Haumāna Bay and the windward side, the fish ponds here on Hawaii Island, along the coastlines. And so we thought, wow, that's a remarkable thing that we're seeing, that something perhaps we had lost track of. The other thing we noticed is that the recovery process, as we saw it early on, was how quickly can we just get back to normal, whatever normal was? How quickly can we get the tourism industry back return back to Hawaii, how quickly we can get everybody up and running. And what we thought was, wait, before we just open up our doors, this is really a chance for us to consider what's going on here in Hawaii and maybe reset the future for ourselves in a way that we have not been able to consider our future, at least in my lifetime, and I think in the lifetime of all of us who are on this conversation. So we came up with this idea, and I'm showing you the website, and you can find it at ʻāinaAlohafutures.com. But we came up with a 4-step process, and the first was to create some values that we felt were important to set the framework for what we wanted to embark on. And the second thing, besides creating the values, is we felt very strongly that this was going to require a large number of us who call Hawaii home to participate. So although the 14 of us all happen to be Hawaiian, we know that we cannot just do it as a Hawaiian lahui. We have to be mindful of all of us who live in Hawaii, whether you're old Kamana or even have chosen most recently to make this place your home, that we're going to have to convince a large group of people of the importance of really looking at these concepts of what we began to call ʻāina Aloha. And so these are the 4 guiding principles we came up with to begin. And Kamana, do you want to go over these guiding principles?
Sure. So, and we can kind of go together. So, ʻāina Aloha, the idea that, the ʻāina is what feeds us, and we feed the ʻāina, our beloved ʻāina, and that relationship. Opu ali'i, we know, I probably don't have to share with this group of participants, right, that feeling of leadership that is benevolent, right? Leaders that understand their role and their privilege is to serve, right? And in the likeness of Lunalilo, in the likeness of Pauahi, right? And then we had Imi Oi Kela Kela, which is really about innovation, recognizing that sometimes, new knowledge is old knowledge is innovation. Our ancestral knowledge systems are innovative, and we also want to take the best practices globally and integrate them, so we have the best solutions for our islands here. And then, the last was ho'okipa, this idea that we are inclusive and embrace, this collective that call Hawaii. And as Auntie Noenoe said, this is important. We're trying to build a movement that reshapes, all of Hawaii. So it's important to try to engage, the broader community.
Right. So the first thing we did with this initiative, which we call ʻāina Aloha Futures, Economic Futures, is we put our guiding principles out there, and we asked the community to take a look at these guiding principles and to tell us whether or not they support it. So here's just a list of the collaborative authors, and many of them I'm sure you recognize names. And so we put out this declaration, and we asked people to indicate whether or not they wanted to support us. And we were pleasantly surprised to find that immediately we received support from over 2,000 individuals and organizations. And so this is a listing, and it's sort of an alphabetical order, and we don't have to go through the whole thing, but I just want you to know that over the last few months, because we started this in April, and here it is September. So over the last few months, we have joining with us in this initiative, not only these individuals, but Maui County has adopted this statement, this declaration, as well as Hawaii County. And we're looking forward to Oahu and Kauai to join us shortly. We're very hopeful for that. Hawaii Tourism Authority was quick to join on because they saw that these principles resonated with them and with their strategic plan. We have been supported by Kamehameha Schools who felt the same way. And most recently, the Hawaii Community Foundation, but Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs, and a lot of large organizations in addition to individuals. So that was our first step in declaring what our core values were. And then perhaps, Kamana, we could talk about
Sure.
the Huli Action Agenda.
Yeah. So as Auntie Noenoe said, this was totally grassroots. None of us are paid. There was no strategic plan. There was no government involvement in this effort. I mean, it literally was just us saying, hey, we got to try to do something. Okay. And so we created that, the declaration, and we thought, hey, maybe this is a way to bring, people together to think about our ancestral values, the values that fed this place, that took care of this place for generations, should be the ones that lead us into the future. And so once we did that, we thought, okay, we have a declaration. Now we need sort of an action agenda, something that kind of dictates, these are the changes and the policies, we would like to see at a high level that are built and aligned to our values, right? That we kind of had listed out. So we created this, we called it a Huli'au Action Agenda because this is a time of tremendous transformation that we're in. And we engage the community in that process. So we as a collective 14, everyone that signed on to the declaration, we reached out and asked them, hey, would you help us to craft this collective action agenda together? And we spent, it was probably a month and a half or so, yeah, Auntie Noenoe, maybe 2 months kind of working through this phase in the process. If you click on the action agenda link, you're able to see some of these policy changes and shifts that we kind of wanted to see. And I'm not sure, can we see some examples, Auntie Noenoe, from the action agenda?
Okay, are you not seeing this action agenda? Is it not showing up?
No, it is. I'm just wondering if we could see the actual, so this is the sign on, if we click on the link, can we see the agenda itself that lists?
That's what I'm showing. Okay, maybe let me do it again.
Oh, okay. You know what it probably is? Try go to your screen share. And then you just got to click a different window. So I think it's just showing the old.
I saw.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
No problem.
Hold on a sec. Okay. There, is that better?
Not seeing it yet.
Okay, let me do it again. Hold on. I'm going to stop and then I'm going to go back to sharing my screen.
There we go. Yep.
Okay.
Now we see it. Okay, so so you can see this is the actual document and action agenda that again is aligned to these values that we kind of put out there that people signed on to, and around ʻāina Aloha, enriching decision makers, in making circles whose life work embodies the wisdom first and highly successful stewards of Hawaii. If we address historical and current injustices against Uiwi Hawaii, including water rights, so on and so forth. There's a whole list. Inclusivity, as a foundation in our culture. So, these roles, imi oi kela kela, innovation and creativity. There's things in there about a resilient, regenerative economy. There's things in there on circular economy, policy things around, energy and community ownership, housing, all of these items, gender equity in pay, you know, better healthcare, better education. All of these things are kind of captured in this action agenda. And this was a lot of work. I mean, again, with we're also, you know, fathers and mothers, grandparents. I mean, juggling our own family commitments and everything. This was quite an undertaking to engage the community to try to build this together. But please go and check it out. And what we have, to me, is an action agenda that, you know, we really want to set out and achieve. And it's going to take time and commitment and advocacy. But after completing this phase, you know, we asked now people, community members, small businesses and organizations, some of, you know, our work and why we wanted to highlight and uplift this community voice is we recognize the innovation that's happening in our communities. You know, to me, I could share some of the ones, you know, you know, Uncle Kioki, Auntie Yvonne Carter, you know, this initiative in Kalupulehu, you know, all these ʻāina-based initiatives that are providing jobs for our community while improving the health and well-being, you know, bridging education, economic development, stewardship. There's so many of these innovative activities that are kind of happening across Hawaii. And so we wanted to, you know, try to highlight those. And also, you know, we recognize that in order to make this systemic shift, and it really is systemic, you know, what we're looking to do, it's like we got to take a multi-pronged approach. So another thing that we created was this assessment tool. Auntie Noenoe, would you want to share more about the assessment tool?
Sure. So can you see it? Do I have it right here?
We can.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, great. So we put together a scorecard, and actually what we did was we took all of those statements that are in the Huliau Action Agenda, and we put them into these assessment dimensions. And we have 10. So we reduced all of those statements into 10 different dimensions. And you can see them here: supports vibrancy and integrity of the environment, positively impacts community well-being, supports Hawaiian cultural vitality, increases hiring, job readiness, and leadership opportunities in preferential order. So Hawaii residents, and then Native Hawaiians who are living on the mainland and who want to come home. We contribute to a circular economy, incorporates innovative approaches, improves Hawaii's long-term food security, and builds or sustains vital, self-reliant community food systems, improves resilience and diversity of locally owned and resourced small businesses that align with our goals, and commits and participates to equitable pono value chain involved in production, marketing, distribution, provisioning of goods and services. So those large statements, we felt sort of incorporates all of what we represented in the Huliau Action Agenda. And with some help from some of our friends in the community, like Uncle Neil Hannes, Kavika Riley, and others, we created this scorecard. So this is intended to allow projects to score themselves and allow community to score projects. It works both ways. And we set it up here so that you could actually click on one of these conditions, which begins with the negative impact, you notice -8, or does not impact, which is no points, incrementally improves conditions or significantly improves conditions, or positively provides system change. And that's something that really does actually create systemic change. It automatically adds up your raw score. We included a multiplier column here so that the individual groups could indicate which of these 10 might be really the focus of what your intention is, and it gives you the weighted score. So if you were to take any of the community projects, and you can do this as individuals or as groups, and you apply this scorecard to those projects, it will give you a total by which you can determine whether or not this project, that whatever you're looking at, is bad for Hawaii, really doesn't make a difference in moving a needle, moves a needle toward ʻāina Aloha, or is practicing ʻāina Aloha, or is leading ʻāina Aloha, meaning that it does create systemic change. And then we went one step further with this, because we wanted to see how government or government officials might be able to use this. And so we just created one more step here. Oops, hold on a second. Let me get back to screen sharing. Let me see if this is right. Okay, let me go back, sorry. We wanted one more thing, and that was to provide something for our government entities to be able to assess. And so we called it, here you go. Hold on just a second. We'll pull that up. Okay. So hopefully you can see this. This is what we set out for government to look at. And these are some statements that we wanted our government leaders to be able to use as a checkbox. And so they don't necessarily reflect in the scorecard, but we wanted government to say, does this project place as a priority the well-being of our ʻāina? Does it allow for the exercise of traditional and cultural rights? Does it empower community here to be a part of those decisions? Does it collectively assert our kuleana to degraded environments? Does it recognize indigenous perspective? Does it address historical and current injustices, honor the fact that Oiwi, Hawaii are living, evolving people, and recognize that climate change is creating a future with new challenges? So, you know, that was a little bit extra that we set aside for our government leaders to be able to look at. So that's where we were at that point.
Yeah, and I think like Auntie Noenoe is saying, some of the goals, right, of this, you know, we're trying to create systemic change. So part of it is advocacy. Part of it is, you know, getting incredible creative ideas from the community. Part of it is providing tools so that existing structures and organizations can make better decisions. And so we try to set up a kind of a suite of tools for them. And like Auntie Noenoe said, some of the Maui County in their resolution, you know, actually said they're going to use the, you know, our assessment tool unless it's totally not applicable. So, you know, we have some entities, we're trying to get Kamehameha schools, for instance, to utilize the assessment tool in their decision making. And so you can see we're trying to, you know, it's kind of like building these multiple awai, you know, and returning them to the source and getting them together. So with those, you know, after we completed those, we kind of moved on to step 3, which was, you know, also, geez, as I'm talking through it, I kind of surprised we did all this, Auntie Noenoe. Whoa! But step 3 was this effort to try to bring together these proposals from the community, as I had mentioned, recognizing the innovation and brilliance that's happening in pockets all across our islands, from Ma'o Farms to Waipa Foundation to, Puanui here on Hawaii Island. I mean, all these efforts. So we asked people that signed on, reached out to other community members, got as many people as we could interested, and asked them to kind of present these proposals. Is too sort of, too thought out a name. It's really just sketches or thoughts and ideas in terms of, it could be something that you already were working on in the community. It could be an idea that you wanted to see. And so we convened these Zoom kind of working group sessions, webinar sessions, and engaged, hundreds of participants, in our efforts around these themes that Auntie's, having environmental resilience, management, affordable, sustainable housing. We recognize the immediate needs with COVID. Some of our strategies are more long-term. Some of them are more immediate. Community and participatory-based governance. Mehana Vaughn folks did an excellent session on that. Rethinking education, Lisa Watkins Victorino, Chelsea Keene also contributed. We had a session on circular economies, tech industry. I mean, climate change was in there. We had a whole series of sessions, and in which participants were able to, understand how to utilize our tools and then create their own proposals. And did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I just want to point out to everyone, this is all online. And if you check here, I'm just going to stop on creating circular economies. The slide deck we used is here, session notes. We had individuals actually taking notes, and the chat is in there. You can watch the 2-hour video if you have nothing to do some afternoon and you want to watch Kamana host this conversation about circular economies. And it's all there. It's all there. So it's really, really awesome that we were able to capture all of this and allow it to be used here for our for all of us to continue to make use of it and to learn from it, whether or not you were able to be there on that particular day. What I'd like to do, so you have to tell me if you can see this or not. If not, I have to go in and out again. But what happened was we invited people to participate by submitting sketches. Okay, so
yeah,
can you see this?
I think gotta
I gotta go in and out.
Yeah, you gotta
Okay.
You gotta click the other window in the screen share.
Okay, hold on. You would think by now I know how to do this, yeah? Okay.
No, you, at least I never learn it every time. It's
Okay, now you can see. So here we are. I'm going to use circular economies, Kamana, so that you can just talk about, these various proposals. But here is circular economies, and there were a number of proposals that were submitted.
And Noenoe, I think it's still the different
Oh, you
window.
don't see it yet?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
I need to share screen. Okay, let me stop, do it again.
There we
Now
go.
can you see
Yep.
it?
There we
Okay.
go. Yep. Yeah. Okay. So so this is like Auntie Noenoe said, we had all of those sessions. Different community entities, individuals, people that are involved in projects. Submitted these sketches, and then we had this process allows people, you can still go in and comment, kind of on these proposals. And so you go check out the video, you can kind of see. But yeah, we had a wide range of proposals that people put together for circular economy. Should we introduce ocean agriculture to help restore denuded soil and create seaweed, ocean vegetable industry? Should we support a proposal to limit plastics? There was other proposals about, developing policy plans at the county and state level to move Hawaii towards a circular economy. I should share entire regions of the world now, even individual cities like, Copenhagen, for instance, have these plans for Amsterdam, have these plans for a circular economy. So that was some of the conversations. And you can go ahead and look it through, this range of policies. There's another, some of these were ongoing efforts. So Matt Lynch and some of those in the architecture world, had produced these, sort of pilot structures that are built entirely out of Albizia. Okay, so using an invasive tree that is, we know in Puna was rubbish, caused us big trouble during the hurricane, right? Using that to actually build livable units, and homes. And so, and that's something that's already happened. And, those kind of proposals are how do we scale it up and find funding and resources to achieve it. So it's kind of a whole range of options and sketches around circular economies. Really engaging, and you can look through, from the arts and entertainment all the way through climate change. We have these sketches available.
Yeah, you can still go on if you find your way to this piece of the website. There is a really easy process for you to click on to the consider.it is the program that we're using here. It's an awesome program that allows you to go on here and put your own mana'o against any of these proposals. So I don't want to keep clicking because I have to go in and out, but if you just go here and you click on this, for example, should we support a proposal? It'll open up that proposal, and there's a place where you can actually click on the sketch itself. So we asked people not to give us, we didn't want people to give us, 30 pages of a concept. So we asked them to be able to boil their concept proposal down to a very small paragraph, and you can read their paragraphs and it will tell you, what their intent is, what their goal is. And then you could see Kamana over here happens to agree 97% with this particular proposal. So there's a place where you can click on and you can put your name, your dot right there where you believe it belongs. And as you can see, some people, here's somebody on this one who really doesn't agree with this issue about reusable containers, but for the most part, all of these people did. So this is a great program that is very user-friendly, and we try to solicit, and we still are soliciting community to go in here and just give us your mana'o. Just put your name down there and tell us, and you can use the pseudonym if you don't want to put your real name. But a lot of people did. They just told us who they were and where they agree or disagree. So we encourage you to do that on your own time here.
Yeah, and we don't own any of these ideas. It just was a platform for community deliberation and conversation. And that, that kind of leads us into sort of where we are with sort of this next step and phase, which we called kind of step 4. And right now we're in the midst of it and kind of outlining our efforts and activities. Again, I can't stress enough, we didn't have a strategic plan. There was no, funding. I mean, literally, it was organic for us to kind of come up with this step process, and each step along the way, we've just given our best effort, as community members. None of us are in government or anything like that. So so with step 4, what we're looking at is really kind of moving forward with efforts, I think, towards advocacy. We're going to produce a high-level report that can be utilized by decision makers, and I think kind of some ongoing efforts and activities around how do we achieve this Huliao action agenda? How do we we've already created some relationships between some of the proposals and potential funders, but I'm sure there'll be more activities in that area. Auntie Noenoe, would you like to add to this?
Yeah, I just want to point out one thing for all of you, particularly those of you who are in school. We have here a living library, which is also on our website, and the living library is something we're intending to keep up for a period of time. It will provide for you all sorts of resources that our community and some of us have added here. So you can check on any of these tabs and you can find all kinds of academic papers, articles, references to these various topic areas. So if you want to learn more about circular economy or regenerative tourism, which I never heard of until this process, but it's a real thing. It's actually a philosophy that is practiced in a lot of Scandinavian countries about how tourism needs to be regenerative or part of the circular economy, but that the visitor experience has to directly give back and benefit the economy and the people and the community and the ʻāina. So it's a really big thing that our Hawaii Tourism Association is taking a look at. So I just wanted to point that out to you before we go on. But at any rate, what Kamana is talking about is step 4, and that's where we find ourselves. So we, within the next month, will be able to put out a report on all of this that we have done in a way that we can share with not only government leaders, so that we can hopefully inform them as they make their decisions coming up about how and what our economy should look like. Also with those organizations and agencies that fund projects, who might take a look at some of the great ideas and concepts that have been introduced through this initiative and see if we can match make, so to speak, put people's ideas and monies, pocketbooks together, so move some things forward, and continue to engage in our community because we saw that this was the only process we knew, and we purposely incorporated the ability for community to provide input and to be a part of what our future is going to be all about.
Yeah, so I really want to thank you, Auntie Noenoe, for it's been an amazing team effort, and everyone that's here listening today. I think if COVID teaches us anything, and man, there's so many lessons, because every day can be different and can be a challenge. I think it reminds us, that we're really healthy when our ʻāina's healthy and when our communities are resilient, right? And I want to stress, like, sometimes these systemic shifts and changes can seem, almost impossible, right? But I truly believe, and I know, and I've seen already with the work that we've done, we're creating an influence, and it's because of our community, and it's because of the innovation that's already been happening. And this is, this is our place. We're not going anywhere, and we're committed to it. And decision makers and leadership, are recognizing, and if not, we'll have to reckon with that as we move forward. So, I'm not sure if maybe we can open it up for questions now from those in the group and those who are out there.
Yeah, mahalo nui Kamana and Noenoe for that wonderful discussion. We've reached the Q&A portion of our presentation. So to the viewers, we encourage you to ask questions by using the Q&A feature. And I think just to start us off, I know that there is questions coming in. Just if you guys could talk a little bit more about regenerative tourism, especially during this time, there's just been such a huge push with reopening tourism and reopening the economy in that session. So yeah, just a little bit more about regenerative tourism, and then if you are able to speak a little more about Hawaii Tourism Authority and where they might be at in this process.
Yeah.
You
want to start, Noenoe? Yeah.
Sure. So regenerative tourism. So like I said, what I saw in the sessions that we had, and I would urge you, if you have an interest in this area, to go take a look at the session that we have recorded on there. There were a number of people who called in from some of the Scandinavian countries that have been talking to our own people. And as you know, the previous to about a week ago, the highest ranking Native Hawaiian at Hawaii Tourism Authority is Kalani Ka'anana, who is the Director of Culture, and he has a longer title, but that's one of his kuleana. And he's one of our 14. So we were really happy to have him on board, and he was influential in having Hawaii Tourism Authority Board of Directors quickly sign on as part of ʻAina Aloha. Also, their new CEO, John DeFries, is someone that some of us know quite well, and we're really happy that he's on there because he is convinced that the way for tourism in the future is through this ʻAina Aloha initiative, and to marry the initiative and our grounding principles with the tourism industry. So the whole concept of regenerative tourism, according to Auntie Noenoe, is that tourism should not be an extractive economy. It should not be something that we encourage people come and they take, and then they go away, and what they leave us with is a hole or opala or negative impacts on our environment. The industry has to be contributing in a number of different ways to our own economy and to the welfare of our people. So I'll just say this in a very general way, because I worked in the tourism industry a number of decades ago, but back then what I saw, and I still see today, are closed economic systems. So as an example, I'm not picking on any particular group or company, but as an example, you'll get visitors who come from a particular area or region of the world, and they come on an airline that is owned by that region or people from that country, and they stay in hotels owned by people from that region or that country, and they're funneled through restaurants owned by that region and with tour operators owned by that region. And so so the impact on our own local people and our own local economy is somewhat minimal. It's the spillover. It's not the direct input from or the direct result of our environment, our people, our place having hosted thousands and thousands of people who come from a particular region. That to me is a closed economy, and we cannot allow that to happen anymore. So I want to know how the visitor industry how we, or not we in government, but how government and how our industry can boost the ability for Hawaii-owned and Hawaiian-owned businesses to be able to get into that revenue stream. And so whether it takes, you know, some education about how to start up a business or some other kind of support, we need to infiltrate the industry so that the direct benefit goes right back into our Hawaii-owned businesses, our Hawaii-owned economy, our own families. And beyond that, we need to make sure that people who work in the industry don't have to work 2.5 or 3 jobs, all part-time, none of which provide health benefits, in order to just live paycheck to paycheck. So, you know, tourism, and I've heard this from people, I was so sad to hear the statement from a local person who said, well, I'm glad I don't have to work in the tourism industry because, you know, nobody wants to work there. That's like a demeaning industry, and it shouldn't be. But we've allowed it to become a demeaning industry because the wages are low, because people have maybe have the feeling or are led to believe that it's not a noble job or something that, you know, it feeds their family, but there's no mana in that job. And we need to reverse that, right? So those are, for me, the kinds of things that we need to look at when we talk about regenerative tourism.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Auntie Noenoe. Some of the benefits of thinking about a circular economy is thinking how the different sectors enhance and can operate, you know, with each other. So you think of tourism as a big industry, and the amount of waste, right? The kinds of waste that comes in to our islands, the food waste, the packaging waste, all of these things. You know, circular economy processes allow us to think about, you know, are there ways that we can utilize, you know, when we have regenerative tourism, are there ways that we can utilize these waste streams? So, hey, could the food waste go towards compost and organic agriculture? Can it go to feeding people, first of all? You know, instead of, you know, just being rubbish and waste, you know, can we have the kinds of policies that other places in the world do that, you know, again, limit, you know, these single-use plastics, but what comes in are materials that actually we can use that are compostable and in other ways. So I think that's some of the ways we can think about the industry itself, you know, being more regenerative. There are these other issues around carbon credits, right? A big issue for Hawaii is when people are coming in and out is the CO2 that's, you know, put out into the air from, you know, these jets. So so can we have policies in place that, you know, there's certain amounts that are taxed, or the tourism industry is responsible for restoration of forests, for instance, to take out some of the carbon that they're responsible for. I think these are like some of the policies that that work in other places, and that, you know, again, our efforts is, to me, bring the best practices in the world and let's evaluate them for Hawaii through our kupuna values, you know, and through our perspective. So, Auntie Noenoe, you're muted. Yeah.
One more thing I wanted to just say, because we saw this on the news. We saw the people of Hana being concerned about visitors, you know, overwhelming their community, especially during COVID. We hear often on long weekends that Waipio Valley is closed to all visitors, not just, you know, tourists, but to Kamana as well, who don't belong there, you know, who the community doesn't want there. Part of the regenerative tourism, I think, is not only creating the kinds of experiences that visitors really can participate in regenerating our ʻāina or working in the ʻāina, but allowing for communities, and especially small communities that are heavily impacted by people from outside their communities, which include us, have that ability to determine what their own carrying capacity is, and to determine how they want to engage with visitors, you know, how they want to create the kinds of experiences that will benefit them, whether it's visitors from ʻAina, visitors from the mainland or away, or even our own um, visitors from within the state who want to go visit those areas. So those are kinds of the things that we're really hoping will take traction. And I think they will.
Mahalo nui. I think this next question is a nice follow-up to the discussion. Has there been any government response so far with these initiatives and issues that your efforts have brought to life?
Yes, there has. And we mentioned it kind of briefly. So again, not that this was our intention and starting out in the beginning, it's just as it evolved. But you know, Maui County Council adopted a resolution, you know, in support of our efforts and this transition towards a circular economy. They sent the resolution to the governor, to I believe some of the CEOs of banks, and some of the, you know, kind of economic engines for our islands. Also, Hawaii County Council has adopted a similar resolution. And then, like Auntie Noenoe said, we're working on Kauai and Oahu Honolulu Community Council. Those are some of the, you know, government sort of interactions. A couple of our Hui members are on, you know, this committee looking at the economic resilience of our islands, Na'alehu Anthony and Uncle Joe Lalapilo. So they're involved sort of, you know, in some of these conversations in like a individual kind of capacity. Let's see, some mayors and some politicians have actually signed on to our efforts and initiatives. You know, I think the Maui mayor, signed on, and as well as, and some people are staunch advocates. I think like Amy Peruso, who's a legislator on Oahu, is a real strong supporter, for instance. Auntie Noenoe, you want to add?
Right. And our own county council, almost all of them, not all, but almost all of them have signed on. Matt Kleinfelder, Kanela E. Kleinfelder is a really big supporter of what we're doing. He and Sue Leloy, and Ashley Kirkowitz, they all introduced the resolution at the Hawaii Council level and are pushing for it. So Hawaii Council went a step further than Maui, and they are asking every county department to review the scorecard rubric and to give a report back as to how they can incorporate these ideas into their work. And so that's really where the rubber hits the road, we think. And we're really happy that they're doing so. So our governor has acknowledged that he has heard about ʻAina Aloha Economic Futures. I think what's more important than our governor, though, at this point is a lot of the leaders of our business community down on Bishop Street are engaging in discussions with us now. And I think if we can get their support and their understanding of what ʻAina Aloha Economic Futures Initiative is all about, then that will go a long way in partnering with, you know, the quote unquote movers and shakers of our economy.
Mahalo. Oh, Kamana, did you want to add on to that?
Nope.
Okay. So just moving on, this next question reads, the amount of time, energy, and passion that you both have put into these initiatives are inspiring and reminds me that I must do more for our pai'aina and mankind in general. Can the assessment tool will also be used when considering heritage management issues regarding preserving and acknowledging the presence of previously used cultural sites?
I'll try to take a stab at that. And I think, yes, I think the answer is yes. I think it can. We tried to structure it so that, you know, a broad suite of industries, if you will, or activities could utilize it. And at the same time, I think, you know, we recognize like it's like a living document, a tool for, you know, individual sectors and industries to try to utilize. So I would encourage you, if you're involved in heritage management and that sector, to, you know, take a look at it and see, you know, how effective it is for you folks. And I think, yeah, that will help us kind of just in informing, you know, how the ways in which it's being used. Right now, we know some people in the ag sector, you know, that are using it, as Auntie Noenoe said, some people in government, some funders are starting to pick up on it. So those are some of the industries that I'm aware of right now that are utilizing it. Is there more to add on that, Auntie? Or
no, I think you said it right. Yeah, I encourage those involved in heritage management to apply that rubric, you know, and we should all be applying it in all of the things we do. So some of the larger community impacting projects like the Honua Ola energy plant, like what's going on Mauna Kea, like what's going on our oceans, you know, we should use that scorecard and really try and understand the overall impact of projects, so that, and that scorecard helps us take it maybe a little bit out of the emotional sphere, you know, that we sometimes from the community operate into, and really can put it on the table and look at it as a cross section of thought about all of the 10 areas or the 10 dimensions that we try to measure when we look at everything. So whether it's small community impacted projects or large ones that impact us as a lahui across the ʻāina or in our larger moku community, you know, we encourage the use of that.
Awesome, mahalo nui. So just gonna jump to the next question. Are your initiatives a multi-generational approach which engages school-age children through our kupuna via community education projects?
do you want to start with that one, Auntie Noenoe? Yep.
Kamana, go ahead.
Okay.
Sure. Sure. So as far as multi-generational approach, I think if you take a look at the 187 different thoughts or sketches that have come in that are on our website, you'll just see a multitude of ideas that have come in. And they include, especially in rethinking education, they include a lot of concepts or thoughts that absolutely affect our keiki, our preschoolers. There are initiatives in there about childcare, about you know, promoting $10 a day childcare. So looking at not only the need to take care of our keiki, but the cost to the ohana, the cost to the parents, the economic piece that is required when you look at what is important. So I think you need to just take a look at all of that. And then I just want to, well, I want to say a couple things. One is, we acknowledge that the 187 proposals that came in, mostly from the community, there are a handful that we might have inserted as well, but you won't see who the authors are on the way we laid it out for you. They're not exhaustive. They don't cover every single issue that happens to be out there in our community. Right now, though, we have closed the window for inserting those those new ideas. We hope that in the future, as we move into step 4, what we'll articulate is that this is just the beginning, and what we hope we've demonstrated is a process that we can use over and over again to gain community input, to gain community insight and participation. And so what we decided to do was to close the window for providing new thoughts, even though we received some afterwards. But we did leave it open so that people like you can go on and provide your mana'o into the thoughts that are already up there. And so, so that's a disclaimer that we know that there are lots of other ideas out there that just never quite made it into our buckets here. We urge you to go on, and the URL is ʻāina Aloha Futures with a S.com. ʻāinaAlohaFutures.com. I think if you Google ʻāina Aloha Future, it should pop up. And you can just go in and take a look at all of our websites. So part of our group, we were able to access some really wonderful communications and social media experts who were able to put all this up. The backgrounds that you see me and Kamana using, you know, one of our guys did last night and sent them to us. So we really mahalo. Gonzo for putting all of this up, and the logo, which now months after we started, we've got a logo. So you're the first to see it actually. But yeah, mahalo for your questions. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to echo, you know, Auntie Noenoe's mahalo to everybody. And again, I think part of this conference is about themes of leadership and OEV leadership. You know, not that I know much about that, but I think what we can learn about that is what we see, you know, intergenerationally. And this question around intergenerational education and stuff is, you know, I continue to be inspired by the life of my grandmother. You know, she's gone from the physical presence in this world since 2008, but every day, you know, I wake up and I try to honor her, you know. And so that leadership that we have as a people, to me, is so resilient and strong because of the people that have come before us and the models, you know, that at least, you know, we try to strive to be. And I think if there was ever a time in which Hawaii needed leadership, you know, of this vein and value, you know, that has that opoli, it's now. And it's you guys, you know, it's all of our contributions. And you know, nothing is unachievable right now in the midst of as uncertain, you know, these times are, with, you know, I mean, to be blunt, somewhat political chaos that's happening across America, right? The resurgence of white supremacy, all of these issues, and the ways in which people are speaking up and fighting back. These are uncertain and challenging times that require us to engage, and that engagement, I think, is this kind of leadership. So Kipuka has always done great work. Auntie Gail, everyone out there, you know, you folks have supported so brilliant Hawaiian scholarship and always reaching out to Hawaiian scholars. So really support that truly Kipuka-ness that you folks are. So mahalo.
Mahalo nui. So one more question just came in. I think it would be a really nice way to just close out this discussion. I think has a few parts to it, but it just came in from Mahi'ai, and he writes, if Kama'aina-owned companies infiltrate the tourism industry as Noenoe expressed, and end up replacing links in the tourism chain, such as tour companies or restaurants, what incentive do they have to behave in a way that prioritizes the health of our ʻāina over company profits? Replacing pieces of a harmful industry with our own people does not address the environmental harms of that industry. How do you foresee things changing so that the decisions that are best for our ʻāina becomes the best decisions for businesses and profits?
Yeah, that's really great question. And I agree, sometimes just switching the pawns out doesn't necessarily change the way that the game is played and operated. So it's really point well taken. And I think that's where, we have this opportunity, and, I'm not sure what we call ʻāina Aloha Economic Futures, if it's a movement or, an initiative, but we have this ability to make sure that industry does embody our values, and to link our declaration, our action agenda to actual activities that happen on the ground with the assessment tool. Um, um, I'm actually hopeful when the pre-COVID last Laku'oko'a, I got to go back to Kauai for the first time in a long time, hang out with some family on that side. And it was the first time I had visited Haena since the big floods, and the ways in which they reshaped how tourists can participate, be a part of, enter to Ke'e. And I remember Ke'e, just being flooded with tourists and cars and opala. And I mean, it just was too much. It's just crazy. And going back there last Laku'oko'a and actually, seeing tourists cannot park in the parking lot. You gotta, have a Hawaii ID even to park there. They set up shuttles, and I believe Mihana Vaughn and others were involved in this, where local people are involved in the shuttles and what is taught to tourists along the way. And I would just say, from my limited experience, I'm not living on Kauai, every day, so I can only speak to that experience there. But I left like really hopeful to seeing what a community can do with better policy and government support. So I think those are, like maybe one model here that we're kind of talking about. But it's a point well taken. We have to be diligent all along the way. And the pendulum can swing, but I do think we have a real opportunity with places and examples, that come out of places like KA. Auntie, you want to add to that? Oh, Auntie, sorry, you're muted. Yep.
Sorry. Okay. I do agree with that statement that just replacing some foreign-owned entity with a local-owned entity by itself doesn't guarantee that there will be improvements or changes in the way it is. I'm hopeful that the start is by making those changes that we can influence our locally owned entities. And I'm not saying that some foreign owned entity doesn't have the ability to embrace ʻāina Aloha as well, because I think that is also something that we're pushing for. So if you do business in Hawaii, if you want to do business in Hawaii and you want to be a good person doing business or a good entity doing business in Hawaii in order to succeed, then these are the principles that we ask you to embrace and to learn about. So we have a lot of work to do to get this idea and this concept and this initiative out there into a much larger community. But all of us as consumers and as community have kuleana as well. So we can't just blame everything on somebody else pulling all the strings. We can make sure we shop at those stores, for example, that embrace ʻāina Aloha goals and foundation, that we know, what is Hawaii made and what is the true Kona coffee. There's labeling and there's brands and there's initiatives to try and inform community about quality and about sourcing and origins and foundational principles of businesses. And I think that's where we're going to move to. Not only with the tourism industry, but even in our own community. to look at how we can develop a brand, if you want to call it that, for ʻāina Aloha. That means that your entity, your company, your nonprofit, your business embraces these really important foundational guides.
Yeah. And as Auntie Noenoe was answering that, I I thought of one additional thing. I think we all recognize, you know, we don't want to return to whatever it was, you know, 9 million tourists, 10 million. I mean, there's a carrying capacity that we have to really assess. So in, you know, in redirecting these industries, making them more regenerative, part of that is lessening the impact too. So I think that's a really important thing that will help to guide this kind of effort. But yeah, I definitely, you know, I definitely appreciate that.
Mahalo nui again for this amazing discussion. Kamana and Auntie Noenoe. Just want to mahalo all the attendees and everyone who joined us in on the Facebook Live. Just a reminder, our last and final session for our Haumāna Native Hawaiian Student Leadership Conference starts at 2 p.m. So in about 30 minutes, we hope you all can join us for some Mele Hawaii with Little Archangel to close out this Aloha Friday. So mahalo nui, ahui ho.
Aloha.